this little device along, and I let them know that I am the fairy gate mother. And we just put this over the top of their horses, and we say voila, and the horse gaits. And of course we all know that's not exactly true. But when it comes to trimming and shoeing gaited horses, we often do think that there's some magic formula that will turn our pacey horse into a perfect racking horse or a perfect running walk horse, or our foxtrotter will be able to foxtrot. We just think that there's some magic formula in the trimming and shoeing that's going to help the horse to perform the gait that you want it to perform. I'm afraid that's about as unlikely as it is that I'm going to wave this wand over a horse and make the horse do what we want. Not only is it unlikely and unreasonable to expect shoeing, a simple trimming and shoeing, to bring out our horse's best gait, but it's also unhealthy for the horse. And we're going to introduce a gal here in a short while that's a journeyman farrier, and she's going to help explain what to look for as far as getting your horse's foot really well balanced. But meantime, we want to do a little demonstration that's proved really popular around the country. A lot of times when a farrier who does gaited horses is trying to get a horse to extend its gait and make it longer, what they do is put a long angle, in other words, low heel and a long toe on the horse so that it'll have a longer flight pattern. If, on the other hand, a farrier is trying to get a horse to do more lift, they will give it a steeper angle, higher heels and a shorter toe and a really steep angle in order to help that horse to lift better. And often what you find is you'll have a farrier who will put a really low, long angle on front and a really high, steep angle on the back, and then they think that's going to mix things up in such a way that the horse can do its gait. Well, we've got some volunteers here today that are going to help show how silly that idea is in a way that really helps make it understandable. Jonna is going to come over, and she has got her feet trimmed very long because we wanted to extend the length of her stride. Now you folks all can see that it's working very well. She's extending the length of her stride. She has to in order to get her foot completely rolled over. And that is actually the philosophy behind doing a long angle. Now if you think that Jonna would not be happy walking like this full time, you'd be absolutely right. And if you thought that a horse would not be happy walking like this for a very long time, you'd also be very right. So if you see your horse has an exceptionally long toe and a short heel, if you think of Jonna and the flippers, you'll have an idea about what that horse might be going through. Look at her move. Man, has she got length of stride now.
Look at that big lit girl.
And here we have Melinda. Now Melinda is a very tall lady, and she's got a long stride. She doesn't need flippers, but she doesn't have enough lift. And so what we've done is raise the angles on her feet so that she has more lift. And we'd like to maybe introduce one other concept, and we're going to add some weights, because that's the other thing that we do with gaited horses when we don't have enough lift. We add some weights to their feet. As you can see, we've now added weights to that steep angle, much the way farriers and trainers add weights to the feet of gaited horses in order to get more lift. But the secret of the weights really isn't necessarily just that the weights themselves give lift. Rather, it's what happens when you take the weights off. Now, when she takes her weights off, she's going to find that her feet suddenly feel very light, and she does get more lift. And that's what happens to gaited horses. They're trained in weights, and then the weights are taken off, and then the horse feels that he can lift his leg much higher because the leg feels lighter. Now we're going to put the two of you together. Here we see how effective it is to change up the angles on a horse front to back. We have a beautiful foxtrotter, and this foxtrotter is not trotting, he's not pacing. It's very hard for them to keep the timing together, and that's how it is also with a horse. Katrina Random is here with us today. She's a journeyman farrier who's going to show us how a horse's foot ought to be trimmed in order to be biomechanically stable.
A horse's leg from is a series of pulleys and levers. And so to work optimally, all horses should be trimmed to their natural level. One of the things that we do quite often with our gaited horses is try to alter their gait not through riding but through artificial means. And one of the easiest artificial means is by changing the length of their toe or the angle of their foot. This horse is an example of a gaited horse trim. Not an extreme example, but a pretty moderate example. If you look at her closely, she's got a slightly long toe and a fairly low heel. What this does is it increases the length of the lever. When a horse is moving, its foot will come down, land heel first. The horse's weight comes over it. As they step forward and transfer the weight, the heel breaks off the ground and then the foot comes up. When you make the foot longer, that force required to lift the back of the hoof becomes greater. And that puts a lot of strain down the back of the horse's legs. So one of the things you find with gaited horses is that horses that have been ridden extensively in gait tend to be heel sore and lame. They start getting lame about 8 or 9 or 10. So to prevent that, you want to trim your horse to the balance that it would have naturally. And so what I'm going to do is take this horse who's at a moderate gaited trim, and I'm going to show you how to turn that into a natural hoof. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean it out so you can see it. These principles work regardless of whether you're trimming or shoeing. It's always going to be the same thing. You want to get that horse to its natural level. Okay, so on a well-proportioned hoof, your coffin bone is right here, and the normal breakover is about there. On a well-proportioned hoof, 2/3 of the foot is behind and 1/3 of the foot is in front. What we're seeing on this particular horse is almost that. We've almost got 1/3 in front and 2/3 behind. The heels are a little long, so when I trim them, I'm going to bring them back, and this toe is a little long, so by the time I finish trimming, it's going to be right about there. Cool. As you can see, I didn't take very much off, but if you look, the heels are further back, and now you have 1/3 in front and close to 2/3 in back. Now, if we can put her up on the board, we can show you the difference between the 2 feet, and you can see the change in the angle. So basically, all I've done with this mare is taken her toe back a little bit and moved her base of support underneath her by pulling her heels back. As a client, it's going to be hard for you to train yourself to look for what's appropriate. But what you want to see when you look at the hoof, you want to make sure that it's balanced from side to side. The whole key to this is harmony and balance. You want to see it balanced from side to side and balanced from front to back. So if you look down this horse's leg, from here, If you follow the angle of the pastern, on the trimmed foot now you have a nice balance with half of the hoof in front and half behind. If you follow the same angle on the untrimmed hoof, you're going to have 2/3 of the hoof in front and 1/3 behind. By shortening it up and pulling the hoof back, by taking the toes back and bringing the base of support back by pulling the heels back, we've eased the breakover. So instead of having a long lever where the breakover is out front and having a lot of force to lift it, we've shortened the lever, so now there's less lift involved and it eases the strain on the ligaments and tendons. And that's the most important thing for the long-term soundness of our horses.